Hey boys and girls, it's Dead Meme, and I hope you're ready to go into the rift. Here we go. So before we can even enter the rift, we're going to have to find one of these rift teleport stations, and that's where I'm going to start in this video. So we're just going to open up my map, and as you can see, I'm near one of those big space-time rifts that aren't passable without an Avorion engine, but I'm also in the center of the galaxy. So at this point, me and a friend of mine, we've been exploring all of these little space-time rifts, and we've been unable to find any that don't spawn next to the Great Rift or within the center. So let's just put Rift in there. As you can see, there's one here. That's where I am now. There's one up there. We have a few of them marked, but for the most part, I'm just not seeing them outside of the center of the galaxy. So just look for a green mass sector within some sort of faction. The pirates can get them too, unfortunately, which is a different issue. You'll need to make peace with them. It could be expensive and time consuming, but that is a different story. All right, so I was doing a bit of research before I made this video to see if there's some things that I may have missed or need to include. I have noticed there is an impression, at least among some people, that this is a free DLC. It is not. You're not going to be able to interact with this space station without paying the $11 CAD. I don't know what that turns into in freedom money, but we're going to move on from there to actually operating the space station. So you'll open up the Rift Center with F, and you'll have a couple of options. I have a mission queued up, but I'm going to move on to the mission board, which is what you're going to expect to see when you first arrive. So this is the mission type on the side. So I recommend, if you can, these rescue lost expeditions. Like, I hate these. Like, these are terribly designed. Maybe you're going to like them, but I can only guess. Core extraction and recovered minerals and applied xenobiology or xenology. These are the three that I've done relatively successfully without too much of a headache. But we're going to look at this lost expedition rescue. So here it's going to tell us what we're going to require. The teleporter, or the teleporter constraints, will not operate unless your vessel has some docking equipment and a mass restriction. And this is the inspected environment. So we're going to have a hull disruption or hull degradation, shield disruption. This is the expedition details. So if you look at how deep the rift is, so this is how hazardous the environment is to your ship. The method of exit, which we'll cover when we get to that point, and the secondary objective to collect artifacts. So if your ship is bigger than this, and mine definitely is, you're going to need to slide this bar. It will alter the effects of the expedition. So understanding how the shipbuilding and the attributes of things in this DLC, very important, and we'll cover some tips on how to make that a bit easier for you. But to keep in mind, if you're going to run a rift with a friend, make sure that you're the party leader, or the individual who activates the quest is the party leader. Because if I'm with a friend, I've got this icon, he activates a quest, and then the teleporter, he's running it alone. So keep that in mind. The group leader, which is this icon right here, you're going to need this in order to bring your friends along, or your allies, or anyone that's in your group. All right, on for the next part. Okay, so we're going to open up the mission log, and this is going to help us figure out whether or not we're ready to run the mission. You can get there by pushing P. This is the button you're looking for, and then find the mission you're doing. So I'm doing rare minerals. So this is letting me know I've got enough free space, but my ship is very large, and if I teleport in my current state, the ship will likely receive some pretty big damage. It'll be pretty bad. So we're going to have to go into the build menu in order to deal with this. So while we're in this build menu as well, there's a show, you can configure it to show all stats or less. You're going to need all in order to really understand what's going on. So the mass volume is, here we are. So I am over by a fair amount. So if we use the view tool, I strongly recommend look at Ognite. This is usually the biggest culprit for weight on a ship. All right, and since Ognite is such a large culprit of weight, if you look through, you can kind of middle mouse on them and you can see the layers that the ship designer has used in order to create the system. If you middle mouse and just hit delete, eventually it'll pop off, right? So you'll get a refund of the Ognite, the material that went into building it. As well, we need to look at a few other things. Your cargo bay. Your cargo bay, if it's not made out of trinium, it's you're unnecessarily heavy. Crew quarters as well. I believe they're typically made from trinium on this ship, yes. Framework, if there is any. Sometimes people make it out of ridiculous materials. A hangar is very much optional. I love carriers, but even I'm thinking of getting rid of this. Speaking of the hangar assembly blocks, get rid of them. You're not going to spend enough time in there. Hangars, or sorry, your docks, make sure you only have what you need. Your directional thrusters, you can turn them into something else as well. These guys are all Avorion. That's not too bad. Your torpedo storage, I would just get rid of it. You're not going to get a torpedo off on the giant fleets that are in there. Your shield generator, Avorion's all right. Energy container, this is where I made a bit of a compromise. So I turned many of my Xanians into a trinium version, so the energy container got downgraded a bit. Generators as well, I downgraded to trinium in most places and upgraded to Avorion to kind of make up for the difference for power generation. And for the most part, you can just kind of cycle through until you're happy with the weight. But the big problem or troublemaker is going to be Ognite. This is the one in iron as well. They are very heavy metals. Xanian is used a lot for subsystems such as shields. You may want to consider changing that up, downgrading or upgrading in order to make that compromise. Alright, so I've made the ship much more practical for what we're doing here. This ship once had a fighter factory on it. I took that off, so the assembler blocks are no longer on there. I removed the vast majority of the cargo bay and replaced it with trinium. Same with the generators. We can find them. The gyro array, I've taken some bites out of because Ognite is, I think, the second heaviest metal in the game. Let's see, Inertia Dampeners. I didn't tinker with too much. I took out the flight recorder. There's only a handful of assembly blocks left, which don't make any sense. Little assembly blocks are one thing to also add. We're going to require some subsystems in order to gain protection from the Rift's environment. So as you can see on this one, there is a little bit of Rift protection, as well as on this one. When you accept a mission from the Rift station, it's mission board. If we accept this mission, they will give us some Rift generator equipment. Maybe we won't find it here. Here, let's go into the subsystem menu. Alright, so this is providing us +5 to subspace distortion. While in the Rift, the ship will constantly take damage depending on the amount of protection you have, so you just drop her in, currently install it. I don't believe it matters. You will lose this after the mission. This is a temporary buff, but the ones that you get from completing the missions, you get to keep. So, moving on. So to keep in mind, before we jump into this Rift, we're pretty much ready to go. This is not necessary, but highly recommended. Call up the Rift station, the Research Center shop. I would have a few of these in your inventory. Sometimes you'll require to come back to an area. And unfortunately, the strategic map does not have any natural markers on it. A object detector, very helpful to have. But this is definitely going to save you an enormous headache. You're going to be able to drop this in the sector to return to an objective that you're not able to see in this map because of the, I guess, these subspace distortion mumbo jumbo. So select the teleporter, push F. So it lets us know that this is a point of no return. If you are, if your ship is damaged here, or if you don't get back in time, as there is a time limit to these missions, the ship will be destroyed, and any resources it might be carrying. So you can tow it to a repair dock, but you know it's not ideal paying 70 million to repair a ship. But so we're as soon as this is done loading and I've got something to show you, we'll come back to it. All right, so you'll pop in, you'll be in like a little protected bubble. The Zotan function here, like they do in most places, if you fire or mine or whatever, you're going to get their attention. If you look around and see these little blinking lights, if you travel near those, these Zotan are a lot less likely to attack you unless you perform part of your mission objectives. So if you look at the top near the this is the debuffs I have at the moment. My hull is strong enough to handle the distortion here, but if you get away from these little blinkies, you're going to get the little Zotan icon. It's going to pop up, and that's going to let you know that you're getting too far away from these beacons and they're going to come for you. And it's not too terrible, but there's so many of them that it makes it almost impossible to accomplish the mission. So there is an optional objective here. I find it's nearly impossible to accomplish with the madness that ensues, at least alone. But I'm going to skip to the next part when I come across something worth telling you. So you may be tempted to fire on some of these ancient defense platforms that are out there. Do not do it. It'll aggro all of the Zotan here when you do a weapons discharge. I also do recommend, if you can, like, bind your turrets to a button. You can do that in the I menu. So you can make them group 1 and turn them on or off. I strongly recommend that, because when you hit this and you accidentally miss and you fire into empty space, the probability of aggroing one of the Zotan becomes relatively high. Many of the mission objectives, they kind of have like an orange hue to them, like that, or an orange shimmer, I guess you could say. As you could see, the Zotan fleet here is monstrous. Like, I can beat them, but you're not going to accomplish the mission, and you're not going to get the reward if you spend all that time fighting. Alright, so we'll pull up next to this guy. We'll release the escape pod. And we'll move up to it. This is the part that I absolutely hate about these missions. Is trying to dock these stupid escape pods, and there it is. The fleet of Zotan have aggroed. So I'm going to pause this up and come back. So as you can see, many of these missions I feel aren't well designed. Like, look at this nonsense. But this is the only mission that I feel is horrible. And now that I've got them, I can use this button, hold down left shift to get to it, and we'll charge up and escape. And we'll get the reward for completing the mission. So, back in a bit. Alright, so once you've zoned out of there, they'll give you a little call from the research center. They'll tell you, hey, you've done it. A reward will be arranged. So, now I get to choose. So, do I get more shielding, as well as some, let's see what else we got on here. Shield durability, subspace protection, which is great, or I can go with a turret, more armed turret slots, and subspace protection. I'm going to take the shields, and there we go. So now I can pop that permanently into my system, if I spell shield correctly. And there it is. So now my ship permanently has additional subspace protection. Okay, I think that's a good place to call it. This is more of an entry-level video for the very touching the surface of the DLC. So if you've got something to add, please throw it in the comments. Like, I could use the help too. Hopefully, if I find something worth showing you guys, I'll make another video. Perhaps we should look at designing a ship that's more appropriate for these missions, but that's for another time. Thanks for coming by.